Hello and welcome to Unacademy. I welcome you all to this Hindu analysis. We have an interesting set of topics which we have to discuss, and most of them revolve around Iran, Israel, and what is the aftermath of what has recently happened on Sunday. Now, when we talk about the topics, there was one editorial on the 16th Finance Commission, and certain concerns were talked about. Good morning to all of you. And thereafter, the text and context article was about missile interception, which has been in the news quite a lot in that regard. So this is the text and context article. Thereafter, Iran, U.S, Iran, Israel, and Indians being impacted by this Iranian strike in UAE, all are part of the, you can say, landscape of the news which came. And we have one more editorial about Skill India and the problems it is facing. And last but not the least is GST collection has increased by 8.1%, as we'll discuss. So in the newspaper, we have seen multiple different forms of, you can say, concerning articles about what is happening in the Middle East as of right now, or the West Asian sector in that sense. And these articles are trying to point out what is the further course which is going to happen. We know that since Sunday, there has a lot which has been, you can say, a lot of developments with regards to this whole concept. We have covered it through shorts also. In this, we'll try to see what is the stable understanding which has been created. Now, remember one thing, that the PDF of this session from today onwards will be in the Telegram group, the main Telegram group of IAS English. So do subscribe to the Telegram channel because it will be there. Okay. Now, the first article is about the 16th Finance Commission. And we have already had a very long discussion with regards to how the 16th Finance Commission has introduced 2 to 3 new indicators per se with regards to state GDP taken into consideration, and it has reduced the weightage of certain areas in order to do that. But this article, because of C. Rangarajan, the person who's writing it, becomes very, very important because it talks about certain concerning developments which are there and certain things which should have been done by the 16th Finance Commission but weren't. Now, in very simple terms, as we know, Article 280, the President appoints every 5 years a Finance Commission, and the concept of the Finance Commission for any beginner per se who does not understand what the Finance Commission does, as we know, there is a divisibility pool of taxes which may have been collected by and are collected by the center. This is divisibility pool on the behalf of the state. And thereafter, there are 2 types of devolutions which happen. One is called vertical devolution. The other one is called horizontal devolution. The vertical devolution concept is based on the idea that how much will the center get, how much will the states get. That is called vertical devolution. And he has 2 to 3 things to say with regards to how vertical devolution should have happened in that regard. And at the same point of time, horizontal devolution talks about how each state gets its share within the state share itself, which is, for example, if I divide 50-50, rupees 100 is the divisibility pool. This is vertical devolution, that 50 rupees will go to the center, 50 rupees will go to the states. On the other hand, how will this 50 rupees be divided amongst the 28 states and the UTs per se will be the whole concept in that regard. So how do I divide it among the UTs and the states is the question. This is basically the main job of the Finance Commission, which is to divide vertical and horizontally. This is basic static. We've done this multiple times. Article 280, Article 270. These are 2 very important articles related to it. Now, the article points out 3 very interesting developments per se. And this is an article which gives you some fodder for a critical analysis question. For a critical analysis question, it gives you certain points which you can write where the 16th Finance Commission falls short of how it goes forward in what it is trying to do. Now, the Finance Commission, as mandated by the Constitution, did vertical and horizontal devolution. That is totally fine, perfectly clear. no issues whatsoever. It did its constitutional job. But in both vertical and horizontal, there were certain developments which should not have been there or should have been better by the 16th Finance Commission. So, we know that in the 14th Finance Commission, the central pool of taxes divisibility pool, the state share was increased quite a lot. From 32%, it was made into 42%. This was what happened in the 14th Finance Commission. For anybody who's been following the Finance Commissions, they would know that the 15th Finance Commission reduced it to 41%. Meaning, out of the divisibility pool, 59% will go to the center, 41% will go to the state, and the reduction of 1% was because of the creation of J&K and Ladakh as two UTs. Okay. Now, 16th Finance Commission has said it will remain 41%. But what this article points out and what C. Rangarajan has to say is that how did the center manage this decrease in share, meaning from 32 to 42, 10% the state lost. So basically it is trying to explain this tendency of cess and surcharge. If you have been following this space, you would know that one of the biggest criticisms of the state as of right now, and that is the center itself, is that it is levying a lot of cess and surcharges which is outside the divisibility pool, and there is an exponential increase in it. So what C. Rangarajan is trying to argue is that this is because of the 14th Finance Commission. What the center did when its share was decreased by 10%, the center managed this deficit via three things. The first was cess and surcharge. It started to levy new cess and surcharges which were outside the divisibility pool of the state itself. At the same point of time, what it did was it reduced its percentage contribution in central sector schemes. So, in central sector schemes and the schemes itself, how it basically starts to fund centrally sponsored schemes and central sector schemes. The idea was that in centrally sponsored schemes, it reduced its share. So, very simply, it started to play with the ratio 60-40, 90-10, and therefore, in centrally sponsored schemes, it started to create a new concept which is 90-10, 60-40. So in very good states, what it did was it only went for 90-10, for example 60-40. But in Northeast or vulnerable state, it went for 90-10. The idea was that it was trying to manage this deficit. And this deficit, there were two major solutions it found. Which is centrally sponsored scheme and cess and surcharge were two ways in which it managed this 10% reduction. Further, what it did was it started to not give state-specific grants. The three issues are no state-specific grant, no sector-specific grant. At the same point of time, it started to levy cess and surcharge and also reduce its share in centrally sponsored scheme. Now, you will ask, sir, what is the point of this discussion? What's the point of having this discussion? What C. Rangarajan is pointing out is that this disease called cess and surcharge, which has exponentially increased, is because of the 14th Finance Commission. The 15th Finance Commission did not cap or reprimand the center for any form of cess and surcharge. And what he says is the biggest concerning factor in the 16th Finance Commission is that it did not do its constitutional duty as an objective observer under Article 270 and 280, where it should have said that the unwarranted exponential increase in centers, cess and surcharge is against the spirit of the constitution, and this commission chose to discontinue revenue deficit grants and sector specific grants and state specific grants. And this will come back to bite us, as you will see. The point is that what this criticism is that when the center managed this 10% deficit via cess and surcharge, neither did the 15th Finance Commission or the 16th Finance Commission say that this should be done within a limit. And because there is an exponential increase in the way cess and surcharge is being levied as of right now, this is unconstitutional, or this is against how the constitution had envisaged the way money would be divided via Article 270 and 280. And therefore, 16th Finance Commission is not reprimanding, but rather enabling the center to say, okay, because you want infrastructure and defense, you can do cess and surcharge. Here, there will be a cascading effect, as you will see, because of the next change which happens. So, do you understand the first point which he is trying to make, what this article is trying to make? That the cess and surcharge problem comes because of 14th Finance Commission, but it has now gone out of hand, and neither 15th or 16th Finance Commission in the past decade, maybe the last 10 years, has pointed out that this is not a good development because it goes against the spirit of the fiscal devolution between the center and the state. Do we understand this point? Do we? Yes or no? Yes, sir. Okay. Now, the second thing which the article points out is, and is quite interesting, is this aspect of state GDP. As you would know, in horizontal devolution, a new indicator was added. The new indicator was, while deciding which state will get how much from the divisibility pool of 41%, state's share to the GDP is going to be taken into consideration. Now, what he points out is that the state's share to GDP is not a very straightforward concept. Is not a very straightforward concept, meaning state share to GDP has multiple factors behind it. For example, historical issues, human resources, mineral resources, location, and the simple addition of state GDP into the concept of 16th Finance Commission's horizontal devolution weightage in a way denies all of these issues. What we mean by that is that historically there are certain areas which have faced regional disparity. So regional imbalance, which still hasn't been properly managed, and be it land reforms, be it the way we did it from the 5-year plans, we've not been able to properly manage the regional imbalances. And in that context, when regional imbalances have not been managed till this point, why are you just randomly adding a certain criteria which is going to deny this fact. It's not that all states are on the same level as of right now. It is not true. And if you take into consideration the migration, how mineral resources are divided, how capital is flowing, how FDI is flowing, it creates an advantageous position for states which are already at an advantageous, you can say, position within the larger scheme of how horizontal devolution will happen. Meaning, there is already 96% of all FDI going into only 2 states. If there is nothing which we can do in the overall scheme of things, then what is the point of actually denying all of these aspects? See, understand this point, that when it comes to interstate distribution, it depends on multiple factors other than just the factor that it is contributing to state GDP. How capital flows, how market forces are there, how there is human resource movement from less developed to developed states. I would want to be in a state which is more developed. Therefore, when it comes to the concept of 16th Finance Commission, there is already a flawed understanding. And that is why there is a whole list of states which are going to now be denied, or their share is going to reduce. For example, MP, UP, West Bengal, Bihar, Odisha, Chhattisgarh and Rajasthan, along with Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, Manipur, Nagaland, Tripura, Sikkim, Goa, which will basically see a comparative decrease in the share in horizontal devolution. And now what is interesting is, whilst their share will be reduced, because there is no concept of state specific grants, which the commission has now decided to not give and in principle has denied, this, the revenue gap and the revenue deficit gap cannot be funded by the center itself. So all of these states are now at the mercy of market forces, and the horizontal devolution which they actually used to rely on will also reduce. Therefore, it creates a cascading effect. The center will not give state specific grants. At the same point of time, states will start to lose out on the devolution itself, and further it will then only increase the share of certain states and decrease the share of certain states. So when the weightage of state share to GDP is so important, all of these states will start to negatively contribute to the GDP, and further their money will be reduced. So therefore, there will be a spiral which will be created. Center will not give any revenue deficit grant. These states are already contributing less to the GDP because of less money available because of devolution. There will be less, what we call as capital expenditure. When there will be less capital expenditure, they will contribute less to the nation, which in turn will lead to them to contribute less to the GDP, which in turn will lead to them to get less money in the next finance commission also. I hope you get this. I'll make that flow chart, but there's a whole vicious circle which has now started. It's a cycle which cannot be arrested until and unless you don't give a grant in that regard. So let's try to put all of this on one slide so that we understand what is this vicious cycle which we are talking about. At the same point of time, what is this article saying? See, the first point which is being made, or the first aspect of this article is 16th Finance Commission. There are two major developments. The first is that it did not say anything about cess and surcharge. It should have capped it, but it did not do it. At the same point of time, it said that there is no need for state and sector specific grants. This has also been denied. And at the same point of time, it has brought in an indicator of states' share in GDP as an important indicator. Now, there are certain states who will lose out because of this aspect. When they will lose out of this because of this aspect, they will then have reduced capital expenditure, and when there will be reduced capital expenditure, that in turn will lead to less asset creation, which in turn will lead to less production or economic value addition, which in turn will lead to GDP contribution to further go down. And with no grant, again we come back to this point, their share will be further reduced in subsequent finance commissions. So therefore, if there is no intervention, in the form of state or sector specific grant, which is as it is denied, this cycle is going to only negatively impact states which are already not properly developed. I hope now you get it. Which is that there is a proper cascading effect to what the 16th Finance Commission is saying and has argued for, which is that once it is not going to give any form of grants which is constitutionally mandated by the Finance Commission, it will and this is a product of 14th Finance Commission and has never been limited, and the idea that there has to be a certain limit to which sessions such as can be limited. Do you understand the larger argument of this article? If yes, there can be a question which can be asked in the examination, a mains question in GS paper 3, where it can ask you about the problems or the shortcomings or the pitfalls or whatever it may be. Any question where critical analysis of 16th Finance Commission is being argued, there is a certain way in which this problem is going to manifest itself for sure in the coming years. If Bihar will not perform, its state GDP will go down. When it will go down, it will further get less money. That will create a vicious cycle. Sorted, everyone? Do we understand this? We understand this? Can we move to the next article? Come on. Okay, now, the next set of issues is a set of 4 articles together. We know that on Sunday, Iran launched a saturation attack of a kind on US bases, not just in Israel, but in Israel, Oman, Saudi Arabia, in UAE and Kuwait. And in retaliation to that, the Israeli forces, with the help of the US and the USS Abraham Lincoln, which is one of their biggest aircraft carriers, which is there, in turn did retaliatory attacks, and the supreme leader of Iran is now dead. There's one aspect of how the new transitionary government will come through. Trump has been saying that he will be in conversation with the new management or the new leadership which is going to emerge in Iran. He also gave a war cry to the people that this is your only chance to now change Iran per se. If you're wondering why there is a certain conflict between Israel and Iran, that is a larger historical ebb and flow with regards to how the Israeli Zionist movement The Jewish movement in turn led to them carving a space in the Palestinian sector, which in turn made them have a certain relationship with its neighbors, which were Arab nations, Muslim nations, and that Muslim versus Jew conflict in that regard became a ground reality in that sector. What is interesting about Iran is vis-a-vis its other, you can say neighbors, it is a Shia country, not a Sunni country, and its nuclear installments and program has always been a problem for Israel, because Israel sees that as a existential threat. Because if Iran, and Iran does have nuclear installments, if Iran is able to develop a certain, you can say, regime which has nuclear threat inside it, it is a threat to Israel's existence and how it has been dealing with Palestine per se. So this is not a new thing. It's not a new thing. The US, in order to counter Iran, has, you can say, used multiple forms of channels. Previously, in a non-Trump era, it used to be the JCPOA, which is a joint committee which used to look after the nuclear installments of Iran itself. Thereafter, it also very strategically developed multiple bases in and along the, you can say, Iranian border. If you look at how Iran is placed, it has multiple. The US developed bases in Kuwait, in Iraq, in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in Qatar, in UAE, in Oman, and that is where the idea was that they will encircle Iran, and Iran versus Saudi Arabia is a Shia Sunni thing, whilst Iran versus Israel is a Jewish or Jew versus Islam thing, wherein Israel sees Iran as a natural enemy. More than that, one of the biggest issues which Israel has is that Iran has been harboring and funding two very important actors which are anti-Israel. Hamas and Hezbollah, specifically Hamas, has been getting funding from Iran, and most of the missiles and even the tech and the arms and ammunition comes from Iran to Israel via Hamas. So Hamas has been funded by, ammunition is also given by Iran. So Iran and Israel is something which we have been seeing. The 12 days war which happened last year in June, that was a saturation attack again. We have seen Hamas, which happened in October, which is Hamas versus Israel. There's a total, Palestine is in a very, very bad state as of right now. That's a separate issue altogether. The idea was that, see, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Israel, these sectors used to be problematic. But what we've seen this time, and this time has emerged as a new aspect to this, and we've seen this previously but not at this scale, is that Iran this time attacked all of the allies of the US and all of the bases of the US in the countries which previously used to be considered the safest and were never involved directly in this conflict. Wherein there were two attacks. There were close to 560 drone attacks on the UAE, specifically Abu Dhabi and Dubai. And there has been damage to the Dubai airport. Along with that, there have been explosions which have been heard in the Abu Dhabi sector. There is Palm Jumeirah which was hit. There has been certain, you can say, though our Indian media is not very reliable for that, there's also an argument that a building just close to Burj Khalifa was also hit. Not true technically, but there was some form of explosions in Dubai also. The same, we have Kuwait airport being impacted, the Riyadh airport, and now Qatar, Bahrain, UAE and Saudi Arabia, which were previously untouched or were tangentially related, were directly hit this time, which is a new in this relationship. And therefore, Israel and the US retaliated with a force which was 10 times higher than what Iran did, and in turn, the supreme leader of Iran was killed. Now, why am I having this discussion with you? Because I'm trying to tell you that there are new developments in this relationship. See, Iranian versus the Israeli concept is not new, but the US being hit by Iran in non you can say allied sectors was something which we've seen previously. But the allies being hit is very, very dangerous and very interesting this time. So the point is that the large scale attack by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard in turn led to blasts being heard in Riyadh, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Manama, Jerusalem, and in Tel Aviv. This is a new Riyadh, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Manama. And this has brought into focus new concepts, even air defense as a very important, you can say, security landscape development now. Missile air defense and air interception and missile interception is now a given in the world of drone technology. So, this is to show you the basic geography of this sector. Most of you may be aware of it. Iran, Iraq, Jordan, Israel, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE, Oman. The involvement of this sector is totally new. Qatar was hit, but civilian installments in all of these sectors being hit is a totally new low, if you want to call it, in the Iranian way of going forward. Now, Iran has still not stopped its campaign. As of today, there are again unconfirmed reports which are coming through where Iran has launched multiple attacks within Israel and also tried to hit USS Abraham Lincoln. Though the US has denied the aircraft carrier being hit by the Iranian forces, they are still not stopping, and there are going to be a revenge, and they will avenge the death of their supreme leader. 40 days mourning period Iran has gone into. The political transition of Iran is a more difficult task, and as you would know, the US is very good in toppling regimes. As we have seen in Afghanistan, when it comes to installing a stable regime after a forced, you can say, invasion, this is an invasion only in a way, once they are able to remove a dictatorial power, they always send that nation into a tailspin. This has been a standard protocol of the US. US is very good in removing the leaders, but very bad in putting into place democratic regimes which are stable over a period of time. Afghanistan, Vietnam, be it any nation, wherever they have got involved, this has been the problem. They always create political vacuums which are then filled up by forces which may be appeasing to the US at that point of time. And in the US itself, there's a lot of confusion which is happening in the Trump, you can say, MAGA. As you would know, see, one of the campaigns of Trump at a given point of time was that the US is involved in endless wars. And during his second term campaign, he argued that I will reduce the number of US forces deployed in the West Asian sector across the world, overseas, and I will stop these needless wars. We don't need to be involved. Now here Vance and the MAGA base is asking Trump, or is totally dumbfounded against what Rubio and Trump are doing, which is they are starting wars and they are now pushing areas into tailspin. Here, because of the US backing to Pakistan, Pakistan and Afghanistan are fighting, wherein there is more aggression from Pakistan in that regard. The whole West Asian sector, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and this whole sector is now fighting in some form or the other. Within the past 3 months, from Venezuela to this sector, the US has now destabilized multiple sectors. So when we talk about this development, you have to contextualize it with how US operates. US is very good in removing leaders, but very bad in replacing leaders. Now, in this, the number of attacks which have happened, the damage was controlled because of one very interesting technology which India had actually invested in, and in Operation Sindoor played a very, very important role with regards to S-400 and our missile defense technology. This in turn leads us to or allows us to enter into this article, which is missile interception in US Iran war. And there are multiple terms here. But before I go into that, I want you to understand this larger context. Israel Iran is not new, but Iran involving every other allied partner and hitting them, and at the same point of time, how Pakistan, Afghanistan is going down the drain, at the same point of time, how the US is enabling Israel to do what it is doing, and with no real leader, 35 years rule of the supreme leader of Iran is gone now. There is now a whole political churn which will happen. Though in the 12 days war itself, there was a certain, you can say, protocol which was put into place in Iran itself. But the point is, the Trump is not a leader who is known for nuance. When he's not known for nuance, what is going to happen is that the transition is going to be extremely knee-jerk or is generally going to be very haphazard. And what will happen is that one dictator will be replaced by another. And this in turn will not push the Iranian regime into a new space or a good space, only lead anti-social elements and anti-state elements to capture power in Iran. And Iran has not stopped. It is still going to go after each of these actors because it wants to avenge the death of its supreme leader. Do we understand this point? We will go into this aspect which played very key role in making sure that Dubai or, for example, Abu Dhabi were not hit and other places were not hit as much as they should. Can we talk about this if you understand a larger context? Through multiple shots, through this article, through this discussion itself, we are trying to impart you the larger picture here, right? Okay, now, missile interception is emerging as a very key technology in the world of drones. And in very simple terms, they can ask you what is missile defense technology. And in very simple terms, it means that there is a certain system which is in place which identifies, destroys any incoming missiles via either kinetic energy based weapons or missiles or guided missiles. The idea is first they spot it, then they hit it, and as of right now, if you do not have this technology, you are vulnerable and you are the most, you can say, most vulnerable to drone attacks in that area. Here, missile based interception is something which is being talked about as a game changer. Now, we should understand how this works. The way it works is, there are ground based radars which keep on scanning the environment around it. UAE initially used to use a technology, the Patriot missile technology, which has a cone of 120 degrees. They've now moved to a South Korean Changdong 3, but the idea was it in a 120 degree angle, anything if enters in the radar, you can say signature, it identifies that object. If that object is either a missile or an unidentified object, it then either interacts with a missile launcher or with a guided launcher or with a mobile launcher. And then it tries to intercept that projectile before it hits its intended target. Here, satellite imaging, radar technology, and basic scanning of the, you can say, the Iron Dome, as it is called, the environment or the airspace is done. Standard technology. Here, this is a very important, you can say, component. If your interception is very weak and non-precise, this whole technology is useless. There are two ways in which interceptor missile destroys a projectile. Either it goes very close to the projectile and then explodes itself. There are shrapnels which come out and that in a way trigger the missile itself, or they have kinetic energy warheads which directly hit the target in that area. This is the basic, this is the static portion, science and technology part of the story. What is defense missile technology or interception technology? Interception technology is based on a whole array of satellite radar stations trying to spot enemy concepts. This is very standard. Now, what becomes important in this story is precision and accuracy. And now it gives examples. In short range rockets, Israel's Iron Dome has a hit rate of 80 to 97%. But this is only for slow moving drones and slow moving rockets. The most trusted system in the world, but also one of the most expensive, US Patriot system. The Patriot system, US Patriot system, has a precision of close to 100% when the Russians had used it against the Ukrainians in 2023, though the Russians have now modified this system also, their system also, to basically fool the US Patriot system. But before I talk about the other systems, guess what is the cost of one Patriot missile being fired for interception? Per shot rate of US Patriot missile, I want you to guess. In the US Patriot missile, one shot has a cost, meaning every interception has a cost. I want you to guess the amount that is when it intercepts a missile. I'll give you a hint, which is it is upwards of 1 million. It's upwards of 1 million. I want a wild guess from you. Per shot rate, not more, per shot, not billions. It would be, the system would be of a billion. Per shot rate, not 3 billion. You don't. $4 million per shot. Meaning, for every missile it intercepts, 4 million is the cost of that interception. This is why India has always stayed away from the US Patriot system. The Patriot system is extremely expensive, and with saturation attacks which happen today, with thousands of interceptions, a country can bankrupt itself in basically pushing for each and every shot itself. So 4 million per shot is the cost of US Patriot system. That is why we use S-400, true. Now, in the UAE, we saw a South Korean missile technology being used. And this is very interesting. See, US Patriot, THAAD, S-400 are known. But Chang'e 2, this was in use in the UAE. That is why there were only 3 incidents of, you can say, 3 incidents of explosions in Abu Dhabi and Dubai, because they were actively using the South Korean Chang'e 2. Now, this is considered to be better, cheaper than US Patriot system, and the UAE used it to actually hit 506 of the 541 drones which were fired towards it, and 165 ballistic missiles were fired, out of which 152 were hit. This is the efficiency of this system. The UAE was able to hit 506 out of 541 and 152 out of 165 ballistic missiles. Now you will say, sir, why are we having this discussion? What's the point of this discussion? See, the reason why I'm having this discussion with you is this can be now sprinkled across the examination with regards to terminologies. Terms can come in the examination. So one is Chang'e 2, then From the Israeli side, all of these systems are put into place by the US and Israel, which is for exo-atmosphere, meaning any ballistic missile which goes into the atmosphere and then re-enters, they have Arrow 3 as the system. One more is called SM-3, which is used by the US Navy. Then for endo-atmospheric, meaning within the atmosphere itself, THAAD and Arrow 2 is used. For any which is tropospheric, you can say launches, they have got what is called as the David Sling stunner interceptors. Last line of defense is the Patriot missile system. For counter drone technology, Israel uses Iron Dome. For directed energy attacks, it uses a laser beam, which is called Iron Beam. And air support is given by French Rafales, US and Israel in order to basically manage all of this together. Why am I giving you these names? Because any of these names can be asked in the examination. In light of recent development, Iron Beam, Iron Dome and David Sling are. This can be asked from their perspective. At the same point of time, Iran also uses a missile defense system. It's called the Bavar 373, Irman, Sevem M Khordad, Tor, Masjid, and the Arakash missile defense system. Again, this is available to you in the Telegram channel as a PDF. Please learn these terms. This article is extremely valuable to a UPSC aspirant because it gives us a whole plethora of terms which we can learn for the examination. So other than understanding what is missile defense technology and what is called as interception technology, you should also know all of these terms. You should understand what the UPSC is trying to ask you because some of them don't really have standard names. So we have David Sling, we have Iron Dome and Iron Beam. All three considered very important. Now, we round up this article by discussing how this has impacted us and Indians in that regard. Now, the last part to this story is that most of the casualties across this whole landscape, the Gulf, which is basically a lot of Indian migrant labor, Indians have been hit in two ways. They've been injured, but at the same point of time, they have also been impacted by either being stranded, either in the Gulf or they're stranded here in India. So, looking at the nationalities which Abu Dhabi and Dubai have actually released, there have been casualties. You have Pakistani, Nepalese, Bangladeshi, but 58 minor injury cases of Emirati, Egyptian, Ethiopian, Filipino, Pakistani, Iranian, Indian, Bangladeshi, Sri Lankan, Azerbaijanis. You can see it's a whole plethora of nationalities. Same way in Oman, a 20 crew member oil tanker was hit. It is believed that 5 of them have been taken to the hospital. So, you can say the biggest impact for us is the people who are stranded in India as of right now. Because a lot of people had to go to the Gulf and a lot of our labor and a whole, you can say, conference was happening in the UAE. 84 students along with some faculties are stuck there. So with a proper no-fly ban and the DGCA saying along with the ministry saying that we will not operate flights as of right now in this airspace in that regard. The point is we have a lot of people stuck there and here. The UAE government has been kind enough to extend the visas and the stay of the people. Indian government has said that the people should go to the FRRO and the FRRO will extend their visa. The people who are in hotels, their stay will be extended free of cost with food being provided. So therefore, because we have a good relationship with the UAE and with most of these Gulf countries, Indian, you can say, migrants and these people who are stuck in both these sectors are now getting some form of relief. So very simply, this is one of the major crises after June of 2025. One of the biggest crises in the Gulf is this, and because there are multiple countries which are involved, Iran this time has overstepped, and that in turn led to the supreme leader to be killed. Now the point is, what happens next is more important than what has happened on Sunday and what has happened overnight. Because the transition of Iran into a democratic nation which is based on free principles is more important than removing the supreme leader. I hope you understand this. As I told you, 4 articles. The first is the scale and geography. Second is the most important, you can say, interception technology. And then after, what is the impact? If we are sorted with regards to these 4 aspects, then we can move on to the last 2 articles, one editorial and then one with regards to GST collection. All on the same page here? Yes, sir. Perfect. Now, coming back to India, and see, I have to take CNA tomorrow also, and I'll again have another set of developments for you. This Iran-Israel thing, and this is now going to dominate this whole month's newspaper. So one important thing which I want to say to you is, don't document everything in this regard. Let this matter stabilize, because there will be a lot of news which will come. So let this matter stabilize, and let's see what is left once the dust settles. Because every day I will come and say, this happened, that happened, this happened, that happened. No. There's a curve to this article. Let this article reach its, or let this news reach its, you can say, concluding sector, and then you will have a bird's eye view to actually write something in the examination which is concrete, rather than just randomly based on news which is coming from Reuters or this and that somebody is dead, somebody is dead. Don't. So I will be there with an update every day, but let this topic settle down. I hope you understand this point. If you are going to document everything, then you will have such bulky notes about this, and you should always have a historical perspective. So you start from the 12 days war and then bring everything together to this point. Okay. Now, we all know that the government of India runs a very important scheme which is called Skill India scheme. But recently a CAG audit, Controller and Auditor General of India, the CAG audit of the Skill India project has brought in multiple flaws and problems in this Skill India mission and Skill India project in that regard. Now, this article is based on a very important premise which we have been talking about previously also, which is that we as Indians have a very important advantage in the world, which is that we have a demographic dividend. We have a very young population, and our population will remain young till 2040, which is the main phase in which we will have low dependency ratio, high working population, and our population will remain young and within the working population. Therefore, we will be the worker of the world, and we will be the one who can basically manage the labor market. However, this article says that we are very systematically wasting our demographic dividend, because when it comes to vocational training, which is education which is specific towards career and technical education, we are wasting it. Because in namesake, the Skill India mission is actually destroying our vocational education space itself, and there's no real tangential, and you can say even a tangible outcome with regards to Skill India has not come. In a country, for example, in countries such as or in EU and in China, 50% of secondary level students are in vocational education. In India, that is 1.3%. There's no specific budget for Skill India. It is part of this larger concept of just putting it in a fragmented manner, ministry by ministry, within the budget itself. And therefore, we really don't have any real numbers to show for a vocational education and skilling of India. Now, when the CAG audited the Skill India mission, the following issues came out. As it turns out, in the 2015 audit pointed out that between 2015 to 2025, the audit was done in 2025. The 10-year audit of Skill India shows that most of the bank accounts which are linked to Skill India in which money would be transferred, 94.5% of them are invalid. Meaning, when the money was actually transferred for in the name of Skill India to these bank accounts in the past 10 years have become invalid. Meaning, most probably money was withdrawn and then closed. And 41% is the placement rate of the trainees who are in short-term courses. Meaning, close to 59% of the people who are part of Skill India mission never get placed anywhere. They don't get any employment per se. Further, from a quality-driven approach, we went for a short-term quantity-driven approach, which in turn has diluted the whole Skill India mission because what we are skilling them in is useless. So what is the issue? The issue is that 94.6%, 94.5% of all the bank accounts are invalid. 41% is the placement rate. And at the same point of time, we have gone to quantity. And when we've gone to quantity, the skill itself is useless. So I hope you understand that in the larger scheme of things, it is a purely counterproductive concept. Now, how we can make Skill India better is the more important part of this article. The first part of the article says that we should, rather than giving money to the state for skilling the students, we should transfer this 10,000 crores as a way of educational loans based on demand. Meaning, if students want to skill themselves in AI and machine learning, let's do one thing. Let's give them a loan for which they can use it against a certain skilling project or, for example, education. And this is a better way of spending this money. This is the first solution which it points out. Very interesting. At the same point of time, it says we can also develop skill development levies. This is a very specific thing which is being argued for. It says that we can have mandatory employer paid tax for national workforce training, upskilling and education initiative. Meaning this money can be taken out from the employers itself so that we can skill them. And in countries such as Singapore and South Africa, these levies contribute to skill development programs. Meaning rather than using the taxpayers' money, let the market itself pay for the skilling of the people, and therefore it will skill them in the right skills also. Last but not the least is we need real-time tracking of skill development in India in a transparent manner, because as of right now, we have no real data, and the data shows a gap in what the market wants and what the market is getting. Therefore, when it comes to skill development, Skill India, we need to introduce real-time data tracking. At the same point of time, we can put in skill levies, and at the same point of time give educational loans for, students understand the market better than the state, and therefore they can basically use the money in the right way, in the right sense. This is basically this article, and I hope that you understand. The last thing which we have to discuss today is that the GST collection between February of 2025 and February of 2026, last year, which is year on year, 8.1% increase is there in GST collection. Now, what I've done is I put this into a table so that you can understand the comparative perspective. There's an 8.1% increase due to higher imports and domestic sales, which indicates higher consumption. which means that we have better, you can say now, better consumption than last year, which is good for the market in that regard. Gross domestic revenue again has increased by 5.3%, which reflects domestic sales increasing. Gross import revenue has increased by 17%. Thereafter, total refunds has increased by 10.2%. Net GST collection has increased by 7.9% year on year. And this is very interesting. Cess revenue has decreased, which shows that the government is also trying to, in a way, rationalize its cess income, because cess revenue has gone from 13,000 crores to 5,000 crores. Simple straightforward point is that GST collection has increased, which is indicative of better imports, and at the same point of time, better performance of the economy with resurrection of consumption, which is consumption was declining, consumption is increasing. Consumption is good for the economy because that allows for demand to increase over a period of time, and therefore the economy has some incentive to produce. So in the past 1 hour, we have understood how the 16th Finance Commission has created a vicious cycle which will impact multiple states. We've also understood what has happened in the Iran-Israel story. We understood the historical context of that also, how Indians have been impacted and how missile interception technology is very important. We've learned a whole plethora of terms in that regard. At the same point of time, we've also tried to learn how the Skill India mission is not doing what it has intended to do or was created to do. And therefore, in the overall scheme of things, with better consumption in India, which is reflected in the form of GST collection, we are in a space where we can now harness this consumption to go for better growth. So on this note, remember that the PDF of this session is going to be available in the Telegram channel, and within the next 1.5 hours, there will be 5 questions also through which you can solve the questions based on these topics as a way of evaluation. Thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.